chosen to be the ambassador of Pakistan to Egypt?
Most certainly. I have had a most unusual diplomatic career. Very early in my career, I got married to an officer in the Foreign Service of Pakistan who was much senior to me. So my career has sort of been deeply impacted by him, and I have been going around basically where he was.
Ambassador Seema Naqvi, we know you are very much interested in history. Having spent more than 2 years here in Egypt, the land of civilizations, and already coming from a country known for its great civilization, how did this further invoke your interest in history?
Well, first of all, I have a deep interest in history from a long time. It fascinates me really. And I think among all fascinating countries, this is one of the most fascinating that I have ever visited. But even before I came here, I don't know if there's anyone in the world who is not familiar with Egypt and who has not fantasized about Egypt, because it is, every time you think about Egypt, it's the pyramids.
How big are the activities of the Business Council and the joint cooperation between the private sector of Pakistan and Egypt? How big of a role does it play on the Pakistani economic status as a whole?
Frankly, at this point, we have trade which is around $300 million, bilateral trade between Pakistan and Egypt. Now, when I look at the potential, I don't feel satisfied.
Your Excellency, in July 2010, Pakistan was hit by the worst floods in its history, which brought approximately 1/5 of Pakistan's total land area underwater. About 20 million people were affected, mostly through the destruction of their property, livelihood and infrastructure. Would you please shed more light on the extent of damage in Pakistan as a result of the floods, both on the people and on the Pakistani economy?
Well, as regards the economy, you must keep in view that our economy has already been badly impacted by the war against terrorism.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of our weekly program, The Ambassador. Tonight we have the pleasure to be joined, or actually to be hosted, by the Polish Ambassador to Egypt, Ambassador Piotr Puchta. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to your program. It's my pleasure and my privilege to be tonight with you.
Your Excellency, can you please give us a quick synopsis of your diplomatic career up until you were chosen to be the Polish ambassador to Egypt?
Yes, of course. I started my work with the Foreign Office the end of the 80s. Those were the years when Poland was changing. Poland and all our neighborhood was going through dramatic historical changes.
Actually, you came back to Cairo, where you lived in the early 1970s. You studied at Victoria College, and you told me that you came to Egypt months before the outbreak of the war in October 1972. So you lived here in Egypt at a very critical stage of its history. What could you tell us about life here in Egypt at this stage in the early 1970s?
Well, I was here from August 73 until July 75. Those were the years when Egypt was going through dramatic political process. The process that started with the October War, the war that Egyptian army managed to cross the Suez Channel, the war that brought political process to the Middle East. I witnessed in those times how ordinary people lived in Cairo, in Zamalek, in Maadi.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are still with the Polish ambassador to Egypt, Ambassador Piotr Puchta, and also joining us as well is Mrs. Bogina Shibrek, the head of the Trade and Investment Promotion section at the Polish Embassy here in Egypt. Thank you very much for joining us here on The Ambassador.
Would you tell us about this plan you have in mind for economic cooperation to enhance economic relations between Egypt and Jordan?
Yes, I have a pleasure to be a head of Trade and Investment Promotion section at the embassy, and find economic relations between Poland and Egypt extremely important, and I am very happy to be involved in improvement, I hope, this kind of relations. So, my scope of duties is very wide. We are organizing trade mission, we're supporting Polish and Egyptian businessmen wanting to enter Egyptian or Polish market. I am involved in organizing various official visits to Egypt, to Poland. I have very successful cooperation with my colleagues in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, because this is my main and the most important partner here in Egypt in governmental fields, and there is a lot of various business bodies and institutional bodies we are cooperating with, and we want to establish completely new era, I can say, between Poland and Egypt in economic and trade and investment.
Ambassador Tepitak, you arrived in Egypt back in 2006, assuming your first ambassadorial post. Could you have a quick review of your diplomatic career? When did it start and how did you end up here in Egypt?
Well, I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand about 25 to 26 years ago, and I was put in the Department of International Organizations, where I was sent to be served in our mission in New York with the United Nations office.
And talking about the agenda you have for Thailand here in Egypt during your tenure.
The agenda, in fact, is that we have signed, like I said before, that the two foreign ministers have signed the MOU on making the project that we call ETEP. ETEP stands for Egyptian-Thailand Enhanced Partnership. It means we are trying to build a representative of each other to help defending the image of the other one countries.
So, Mr. Tariq Sanuti, you are the representative of Thailand in our discussion today. You're going to defend Thailand?
Yes, I think Thailand is a different country. You know, we have more idea about the South Asian countries and what is happening there, and especially in Thailand, you know, most of Egyptians don't know more things about Thailand. This scope talks power and make after 1 year the elections. From this time, the situation in Thai move very normally.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of our weekly program, The Ambassador. Tonight we are hosted by an ambassador of a country who once described his country's relations with Egypt as very warm and friendly. Tonight we are honored to have with us Ambassador Brent Erbel, Germany's ambassador to Egypt. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us in this episode. And his wife, Ms. May Erbel. Thank you very much for joining us in this episode. Ambassador Erbel, before I have to ask you about your life in Baghdad as well, but first I have to ask you, you're Lebanese.
Yes.
How did you get to know Ambassador Erbel before he became ambassador?
President, not yet.
Good omen.
We met actually in Beirut. That was exactly in a couple of months. It will be 32 years ago. It was just a few weeks after his arrival to Lebanon as a young diplomat and responsible for the cultural and press affairs, I think. At the time I was a student at the American University in Beirut doing my master's in Arabic, and I was one of the students who got a scholarship to go and to Germany for further studies.
Mr. Ambassador, I know you are fascinated by Arabic or notably Egyptian literature.
Yes.
Would you tell us about this fascination? When did it start and how did it start?
In the 90s, when we stayed for 5 years here, I started reading Arabic novels, and among others Tawfil Hakim and Yusuf Idris, and mostly Naguib Mahfouz. And this I felt as a very, very important enrichment of my experience here in this country.
Ambassador Blankhart, this week the Dutch Embassy and the Dutch community had a very special and distinguished guest visiting them here in Cairo.
Yes, indeed, we had Sinterklaas here, which is for the Dutch community a very special event. And we wanted also to introduce Sinterklaas to the Egyptian community to learn what special events we have in Holland, which traditional events we have, which we hold very high and which are very dear to us and very important to us. So Sinterklaas is definitely one of them.
And we had the chance to be with you during this visit.
Yes, yes. I would very much like to introduce you to Sinterklaas and how Sinterklaas arrives here, because this is something for the children of the Netherlands, especially. I think it is the event of the year.
Okay, let's watch this report together.
Ongelooflijk saai. Ja, het is ook al zo snel. En nou eventjes in de up-tempo. Oké, doen we Sinterklaasje bonder achteraan. Kom 1, 2, 3, 4. Sinterklaasje, bonder, gooi wat in mijn lichtbonder, gooi wat in mijn lijstje. Dank u Sinterklaasje. It goes back to the 4th century or somewhere. There was a Roman Catholic bishop in Turkey, and he is on the roots of the whole Dutch Sinterklaas celebration. But now it's more a Dutch folkloristic feast for children. And Sinterklaas became Sinterklaas because he did some magical things he saved young girls from terrible things. He saved 3 young boys from death. He saved 3 sailors, always 3. And so he became a saint. I like children being happy. I like children see me as a friend, and I like parents seeing me as a friend, and not parents that use me in their education. Will you tell my daughter that she? No, Sinterklaas never does that. I'm everywhere in the same moment, and Sinterklaas is everywhere until 6th of December, and then suddenly he's gone. Maybe he will stay here until the 6th of December. Maybe not. You never know.
We are sitting here on the boat which brought Sinterklaas to here to Cairo. Sinterklaas is very special for Holland, for the Dutch people, but also for the Belgian people, for Czechoslovakia and for Poland, a few European countries.
But for in the Netherlands it's different.
In the Netherlands especially. In the Netherlands it is the biggest feast of the year. It's absolutely very important. It is very different also from Santa Claus. Santa Claus is with Christmas, and we don't want to be confused with Santa Claus. I think this tradition is even much older. Some people say, like Sinterklaas says, it dates back to the 4th century from a person in Turkey who then moved to Spain. And now all the children in Holland, They believe very much that Sinterklaas lives in Spain. He lives in Spain, and every year in November he comes to the Dutch children. Wherever the Dutch children are, he comes, and with his boats he brings all the presents and sweets.